What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Movie Emporium's TV review of the series finale of Dopesick. This is episode 8, which of course is the People vs. Purdue. This episode is, of course, once again directed and written by Danny Strong, the series creator. Now, before we begin, if you like this channel, awesome, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell top to find what's coming next. If you like any of these videos, awesome, hit that like button as well as comment below on any video you watch, including this one. So here we are. We're finally at the series finale of Dopesick. It's been quite the journey, as you're aware. It's been very emotional. It's opened my eyes to a lot of really interesting things that have happened, in our lifetime that I didn't even fully understand. I knew about, like I said, about the OxyContin crisis, but from this being based off a book and Danny Strong's writing and eventual direction, there is a lot of stuff here that is very scary, as we've learned. There's a lot of stuff that's very cathartic with them, especially with the Michael Keaton character. And it's an incredible thing to watch a nation fall apart because of one company and one family's greed. And, it's pretty crazy. But as we always do, I'm going to talk, character arc by character arc. Some character arcs do overlap with one another. So therefore, some of the stuff I might not talk about the Billy character might show up in another character arc, that type of thing. So bear with me as we go through it. And I'm going to leave the Fennix stuff at last because I think it's the cathartic because Michael Keaton has the last say because he is Michael Keaton. We'll talk about his character arc as the last thing because I think it's important. But we'll start out with like the smallest moment. Billy and Amber are at a party celebrating Amber's kind of going away to New Orleans. She is really excited. She is drinking or whatever, and she goes over to Billy and she's like, why haven't you put your transfer papers in? Billy, as we know, stole some tapes. He's also a guy that's starting to question everything about what's going on, and he's starting to realize what's happening. And he says, oh yeah, I'm going to do it. He's never going to transfer. Amber's going to go off and be alone. She fell in love with the wrong person, blah, 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 blah. Well, as we expected and what we kind of saw coming, the boss of Billy, the one that, has been pushing him and kind of questioning why he's so negative, calls him into his office, and that's where a couple executive lawyer people, I guess you could say, are in the office with him, and they know he's stolen the tapes, and they've said it. If you stole the tapes and they somehow leak, you can be under several years of litigation. You can lose everything. And he's like, I didn't take the tapes, blah, blah, blah. So they offer him a NDA. They say, if you sign this NDA, who cares about the tapes? You can't leak them, blah, 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 blah. Offer him $75,000, which is a pretty good payday. And basically they're threatening him. As you can see, they're giving him like, here, if you don't sign this, we're going to ruin you, basically. I kind of saw what was coming. You may have seen what was coming, but he's walked out like dead men walking. Like, people were like, get out of the way. Like the reps, the security guards are like, get out of the way, blah, blah, blah. They walk him out to his car. And I thought it was kind of funny. Like I said, there's more to Billy's character a little bit later with the Rick and Randy and John stuff. But as the manager walks by, the head sales rep manager says to Amber, is like, do you know him? And she basically disavows him, said he was a tool, which means she knows that there's going to be no history with either of them. Billy never really, feels like there's any intimacy and stuff like that. And she walks to her car, cries, and that's the last time we see Amber's character for the entire series. So she goes off to New Orleans, probably has a successful career and blah, blah, blah. So there's not really much to it, but there is one moment that Billy's going to have that's really, really important to the series as a whole, I guess you could say. And that leads into the Richard Sackler stuff, because I want to leave Rick and Randy and John because they're important like near the end. But Richard Sackler, as we know, is the antagonist. He's the enemy of the whole entire series. He's the one that caused all of the mental issues, all the problems with the drug, and so on and so forth. Because it's 2002, because these take place in different eras and stuff like that. He walks into his he's staring at some ads, like these ads that are trying to sell to kids, the OxyContin, and his brother and a couple other people are like, we have a problem. There's a 10,000 signed petition, which was a petition that Betsy signed and everybody signed from Van Z, that are trying to get the drug to be changed. And basically Richard goes, take care of it in any way possible. We just, It is what it is. Just take care of it monetarily, whatever you have to do. So the Purdue Pharma Group meets with Diane and Van Zee and the church lady and all these people that are part of this kind of group of organizers that are very against what Purdue has been doing. A lot of people have lost their kids and stuff like that to the drug. And as lawyers do, as the exact lawyers do, very scummy. These are the people that are eventually going to get misdemeanors and they're be no longer part of Purdue. They offer $100,000 to to the group. They're basically trying to pay him off, is what they're doing. And Van Zee starts telling about this thing called Talwin in 1983, which was a drug by Sterling Winthrop, who in essence took it off the market and put a narcotic blocker in, which I didn't know anything about this, but apparently it's a true thing. He says, why don't you guys do this? And of course, there's a pre-drafted letter that Purdue Pharmaceuticals reps have brought out that basically says they're not going to do that. That is not something that they agree with. So of course, they're upset. The West Virginian people are upset. They're like, this is wrong, blah, blah, blah. But when they're offered the $100,000, they walk out of the hotel or wherever they're at, and Van Zee's like, I could use this money to help out a lot of people. It's like he's really thinking about using it. I'm like, oh man, Van Zee's he's gonna cross that picket line. He's gonna cross that rope, which you don't want to do. And Diane's like, maybe that's true. Diane's of course Betsy's mom. And in the process, the church lady, the one that has been kind of on the fence or whatever, she's like, starts talking about how she hasn't lived there her whole life, about 30 years, and this town where this happened at. But what she has noticed is that cover-ups are so common between corporate malfeasance, corporate greed, corporations, that they just sweep it under the rug. They pay, and that's it. Everything is good, done, whatever. And it's really sad to think about it. But the church lady's like, you know what? If you do this, do it, but if you do, I'm out of the coalition. So she threatens them. She's like, if you take this money, I'm out. And as we see from the opening and closing, that doesn't happen. They don't take the money. But in the process of everything that's happening throughout this thing, so they don't take the money, of course, and the three guys who are going to be, Udall and so on and so forth, are going to be part of the later episode. Before we get into the Rick, Randy, and John stuff, there is a segment with Richard where he approaches his father, and his father has a lawyer with him, and they talk about how because it's 2002, not 2006, so it's taking place 4 years prior. We learn about John Brownlee and about a little bit of his, his life. His father is really important. He is opened a secret grand jury against Purdue Pharmaceuticals. This freaks out Richard. He finally learns who is under the investigation of it. Of course, Rick, Randy, and John. And they're basically saying what you need to do is step back and limiting your personal liability. So what does he do? One of the people that is going to be eventually convicted, he offers them the presidency of Purdue Pharmaceutical. So he's trying to employ the limit of exposure to him, and basically the person that will be in charge will be the one, with all the litigation, I guess you could say. And that's pretty messed up. I'm not gonna use any foul language. That's pretty messed up, to be fairly honest. That this guy is so callous and sad and pathetic that he's just going to keep himself in the limelight, and he says he's going to focus on his family, but he's trying to keep himself out of trouble, which is exactly what happens to him. But we'll find out with that later when they actually do the what happens after that type of storyline, which happens at the end of all these types of real life TV shows and series and whatnot. But all this is happening, it's interspersed throughout the entire episode. But of course, this leads into the Rick, Randy, and John stuff, where basically they're continuing their threat to these three individuals, trying to get them to turn. They're, showing them the video of the testifying where they all knew that these individuals were lying. There's even, Goldenheim was falsifying, lying, what he knew beforehand. There's even documentation that he knows. They used the facts to the sales reps, and the reps were using those facts to pursue the doctors. And basically, because everything is just based on money, like I always say, they basically offer to kind of settle this and give them $10 million to the Commonwealth of West Virginia. And John's like, I'll do one better. How about you just give us $1.6 billion instead of the $10 million to try to, scare them and stuff like that. And of course, they won't. John's like, I'm not taking the deal because we want to have them plead guilty of fraud, and they're trying to do it on faith. They're trying to find something that the grand jury will agree to try and indict them. And this is when we come back, kind of swing back around to the toppers contest where they go. Basically, Rick goes, if we use the toppers contest, interview someone who was part of that toppers contest, you think it will sway the grand jury because it's a competition, drug selling competition with a hard narcotic that is being, the center focus of the series. And so they interviewed the manager that fired Billy, and he tells them about this contest, about how, of course, the more drugs and the more milligrams they sold, the more money they made. It's money, of course. And when he's talking to Rick and Randy, he sees a black car, which of course is maybe a detective or somebody trying to put the squeeze on him. So he walks back and stuff like that. And he talks about, how his people were making money and how all this data seemed legit. And they were just pushing until it got out of control, but they were making more money. Well, Rick and Randy basically ask him, why'd you quit? And really messed up situation where he's like, I went all these depositions because there were so many lawsuits. And then one day he basically was let out to dry. No lawyer showed up. He was basically put on the hook. And he's like, I can't do this anymore. And that just shows you Purdue Pharmaceutical and how skeezy and sleazy and just disturbing individuals that they are. But this leads to Rick and Randy learning about Billy. Now, because it's 2006, Billy has been long gone from, of course, Purdue Pharmaceutical, and he lets him into the house and talks to him, and they're like, we need the tapes, and Billy's like, I don't have any tapes, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, well, if you give us the tapes, you'll be the better man, and blah, blah, blah. He also claims that the tapes were destroyed, but Rick tries to coerce Billy, and Billy just doesn't do it. That's when we learn that Billy has a wife who is pregnant. They're going through law school, and Billy is basically changed for the better, except he's not giving them the tapes, which they know he has. And he makes a swipe at Billy about the situation. Makes you wonder if Billy's just a really sad, pathetic character that got mixed into a really bad situation and got out of it at the nick of time before everything went down. But the most impressive thing out of everything that kind of actually made me feel a little proud of Billy is he never signed the NDA. He was not willing to take the money from the group, and that's why he was walked out dead man walking. And of course, Rick finds a box on his desk. It's the videotapes. Billy had a change of heart, or his wife had a change of heart. They show the videotapes to, of course, the lawyers. The lawyers go out on easy as they would do. And they come back with a misdemeanor / $600 million settlement, which, of course, John tells Rick and Randy. And it seems like this is going to be a win for everything. It seems that it's one of the biggest paydays in history, not in the sense, but it's one of the biggest amounts ever given. This looks like a win for everybody. And of course, John gets a call from the Attorney General. And basically, Udall's attorney wants to put the thing on ice, the whole settlement and stuff like that, to look over it, to deploy. It's a time tactic, I guess you could say. And John basically tells the Attorney General to go F himself, and it's amazing and kind of awesome. And this leads to, the next day where John, Rick, and Randy are kind of talking to one another. And this guy comes in, says, you need to talk to John. And John's like, what is it you need? And of course, John Brownlee, for what he did, is on the short list to be fired from his position, which sucks because he did the right thing. And in the end, it really leads down to they got a $600 million settlement. The misdemeanors lose their jobs. The problem is these people in the courthouse, they're trying to, the protesters are in there, and also the victims of these, Oxycontin are in there, explaining their case and explaining how you should repeal and not take this agreement. And of course the judge just goes for it. He's like, whatever, we're gonna deal with it. You're gonna, this is the deal that's gonna happen. But in the end, they take the deal. The deal's done. And of course, Rick and Randy are looking into a new case. Bridget stops by because I thought I didn't think she was showing up in this episode. I thought she was officially done with the series apparently, and I was a little bothered by that. I'm like, so it's just gonna leave it there. There's gonna be no more with Bridget. But she goes and celebrates, for them trying to, pushing as hard as they did, and so on and so forth. And that's pretty much the end of the story for Rick and Randy. They just kind of celebrate, and yeah, that's it. The story's done for them, and overall, it's a pretty pretty powerful stuff, but they still didn't get what they really wanted, which really sucks. But with that said, that's the end of Billy, Amber, Rick, Randy, John, Bridget, and well, for the most part, Richard Sackler, which we'll learn about in a second, more about him. And so we'll officially leave it off with the Fennix, Michael Keaton character stuff, because he's the kind of crutch of how this episode kind of ends with his, kind of rise above everything. But he has been clean for a while. It's 2002. He's been clean, all that good stuff. And he's worried about getting off the Suboxone because he's worried about possibly getting back on the Oxycontin and stuff like that. And he comes across Elizabeth Ann, who is the girl that I think propositioned Randy, or someone was propositioned, and that she propositioned in, of course, episode 1, I believe it was, or episode 2. And she is trying to come clean. She's trying to go clean, but she talks about how she has been told that she's going to die because she doesn't, because her doctor is not a very good person. But at first, she's very apprehensive to, of course, Michael Keaton's Fennix character. And Fennix basically offers to just take her to lunch, and then proposes this concept of what he's been doing with Suboxone, with Van Z, with helping her get clean. And she goes for it. She's like, okay, but I can't guarantee anything, that she won't, kind of drift back to Oxycontin or whatever she's been doing. And basically, this is the first step to friendship of the two. They become like really good friends. This is where they just start talking. She like recommends something out of Vanity Fair. They just kind of start having conversations, and this leads down to Fennix kind of having a revelation, or kind of finding his I want to say niche, or his like calling, I guess you could say, where at first it's just Elizabeth, they're talking, so on and so forth. Then it becomes the old man, the guy had like the back problems, stuff like that. Then he eventually buys a bus, and then I'll get to the conclusion in a second. But he first, after he takes Elizabeth to her first, Suboxone thing or whatever, he goes to Betsy's house, where he talks to Jerry and, of course, Diane. Diane doesn't really want to have anything to do with him. She's just, she's a mother, it's really understandable. But Jerry, who has been a very stern individual, who's been a very problematic when it comes to understanding and like forgiveness and stuff like that, he feels like a very changed person after this. He knew that Betsy was not in a good place, and what happened to her was a travesty. And I think he's changed, at least it seems like he's changed. And he tells the doctor that, there's nothing we can do to change it. There's nothing we can say that will change it. We just have to live our life. And he's like, doctor, just go live your life, just don't worry about us. We'll survive somehow, and so on and so forth. And it's a very powerful moment, because Jerry's always been that forceful guy, but he's always a father that cared about his daughter. And it really shows that he's just kind of in a place where he either has to move on, or it's going to destroy him. And I think he's starting to move on after this situation. Of course, Diane was like, we didn't invite you to the funeral because we didn't want you there. And he's like, that's why I didn't go, the Fennix character. And that's, where Jerry's character ends. He ends with a kind of just moment. He just kind of is just sitting there. He's broken, but he's also seems like a guy that's going to maybe do something, maybe just kind of live his life and do what he needs to do. Of course, Diane is part of the coalition, so she pops up in different segments of the series, or this last episode, because she's the bigger character of the two characters of Betsy's parents. This, like I said, this leads to Fennix, finding that bus, bringing more and more people to the Van Z's character, his doctor's office as a Suboxone, to the point where he is now working at Mountain Ridge Health Center. I don't know. I couldn't find any information if he started it or if it was just something that he was part of. But it seems like he's gotten off the Suboxone. He's now officially a doctor again. He has his nurse with him again. And the episode ends, and there's some more stuff I'm going to talk about in just a second. But the episode basically ends like a lot of episodes do, where it's him, Fennix's character, in an AA style meeting or a drug style meeting where people are talking about their use of drugs and stuff like that, giving that speech, that kind of character moment where they kind of almost like going, I don't want to be like prude or anything, but they're going for like that Emmy moment in a lot of aspects, where they're just giving all the information. They're talking about how, this drug affected people, and how we find ways to move past it and go past it and try and better ourselves. It's that type of speech that is very prominent in these types of movies or TV series and so on and so forth. So it ends on that moment. And then it goes to like the, the live, what happens after that situation. But that effectively ends the Fennix stuff, effectively ends the, all the stuff that he had to deal with. Of course, Betsy's story ended in the last episode. But it feels like Fennix, for the most part, has officially become a changed man. He's officially found something, a calling of sorts. And I think he becomes just a good human being with some things that he has demons that he always had to deal with. But this feels like a new driving force for him, where he will change people for the better. Whether, I don't know how much Fennix is like real life persona was like this, but it seems like it was 100% truthful, I guess you could say, or as much as it can be in a TV / like Hollywood sense, I guess you could say. So that effectively ends Michael Keaton's role in the series. Very interesting, kind of, starts here, goes way down here, kind of slowly rises here, kind of drops again, and then finally goes back to the stratosphere and stuff like that. So it's it almost feels like an Emmy type nomination for a series like this, which I wouldn't be surprised if there's some Emmy nominations for some of these actors. So that effectively ends the series itself. There is a portion at the beginning of this episode which it deals with a group of protesters at a museum, basically protesting that they no longer want Sackler's money. They no longer want, they want to protest Sackler's crimes and stuff like that. Betsy's mom, Diane, is part of that group. And then it leads to the end where we get actual footage of people, real life people, and the situations they went through. How the museums are basically, in essence, like turning down the donations or the endowments from the Sackler family. It explains how the Sackler family was sued, especially David and Katie, how they tried to like clear the name, but of course they got kicked out of New York, and they got, were trying to defend themselves against senators who were very much, throwing stuff in their face, mud rucking and stuff like that. And there's also a portion where Richard Sackler was trying to spin it as he always does, say this is very, lawful and so on and so forth. And it basically ends with just like, if you ever watched Adam McKay movie like The Big Short, it's very similar to that situation where you see a lot of stuff, but there's also a point where they point out that 30 million pieces of document and $4.6 billion are going to be handed over, a lot of lawsuits and stuff like that. But in order to get this exchange, Richard Sackler and his family are not going to be able to be sued at any point in the future. But it kind of brings up today where they, in essence, got pardons in a lot of aspects. They got away with it. Very disturbing, makes you very, very angry when you think about that these people destroyed lives and they're still very greedy, still making a lot of money. It's just they got knocked for a count for two and then got up and walked away. And that's pretty much where the series ends. It ends with that live footage, giving us some real information for what happens after that in 2021. It's depressing. It really is. Even after the series, even after the $600 million and the misdemeanors and all that stuff, it feels like still that everything failed for Rick, Randy, and John, for the protesters. It feels like a win for the Sackler family. And it's so frustrating to watch. And this is not a blame of like Danny Strong or the writer of the book that this was based off of. It's just the fact that this is actually still going on and happening. And that is the end of Dopesick, the 8-episode limited series that premiered on Hulu, that was created and written by Danny Strong. This episode I don't feel is as strong as the last episode, just because of the emotional level that you had to go through in episode 7 with Betsy's death and just everything going down. What this episode has is some powerful moments of Fennix's character. I think that's the best part about this episode. I think Rick and Randy and John stuff just kind of deflates for the simple fact that in real life, there's just nothing they can do. They have to do what their higher ups tell them to do, and they can't fight it because of, the greed and all that stuff, and, watching it happen. And like I said, Richard Sackler and all that stuff is just very, you just want to choke Richard Sackler. It's just so sad. And then Billy and Amanda are fine. Like, the ending plays out just exactly what you expect. But I think in the end, this is a series definitely worth watching. It's definitely emotional. It's definitely hard-hitting. It has its moments where it really takes you to places you don't want to go, but you realize you have to, because it's a truthful thing that happened, and it's just the way it is. With that said, episode 8, I'll give 8.5 out of 10. I think it works, not as well as the last episode, but it still is emotionally strong season finale or series finale for what it is. So, and after all that's said and done, with every episode now officially over, I will give the entire series 8.5 out of 10. 8.5 out of 10 seems fine. If you I'm trying to think of the averages and all that stuff like that. So with that said, thank you so much for going on this journey of Dopesick, the series on Hulu. It's been kind of awesome to talk about. I appreciate all the comments that you guys been putting in of course, the videos I've been doing is really much, fun to read, kind of, chat back and forth. But as I always do, thank you so much for watching. Comments below, what did you think of the episode? What did you think of the entire series? Do you think it was great? Do you think it was bad? Either way, just let me know what you thought of it. But otherwise, if you like what you see in this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell top the finals coming in next. If you like any of the videos, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on whatever the next series is. Peace out.